Go look at
I
them.
think it's a rock salt.
I think that,
Rock salt.
I don't think you got a chance in hell that it's anything other than that.
You agree with me? The way we pour it.
Yeah.
I can't believe she did
And
that.
she bought stuff for it.
She buys them like
She
one
did.
bag. She buys them like one bag.
I know,
You
but
how
she,
many bags you
but
need?
at one time we had stuff.
Do you know how many? Do you know how much ice melt you need to drill those fuckways in the
No, I know.
You probably need 20 bags.
Did he buy those things yet?
I don't think so.
What the hell's the holdup on this? Winter's gotta be over by the time we buy it. Hmm?
Michael, no, right? You don't come on? Housewives.
I don't know. Must not be you. He's gonna do this first, isn't he?
Janice is mad we're coming.
She is?
Yeah. Next time you can't come. No, it's all-
Why is she mad at me? I don't. She what? I didn't know that.
Yeah, she's in my office.
She didn't know?
All right, this is Committee on Ways and Means. This is Monday, February 4th, 2019. We're at 5:45. I have Councilor McKinnon.
Here.
I have Councilor Matusky. We have two members present right now. Do not have a quorum, but we could have an informal discussion. The House Assembly should be here.
Well, we do not have a quorum, so what we'll do is we will wait for Councilman Simonelli to show up, but we could have an informal discussion on the items that are present until he is here in attendance. Can we salute the flag, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin, Councilman Marchese is unable to attend tonight due to family business. Please, yeah, we'll go with item 2.
All right, item number 2 is a resolution by Council Michael McLaughlin that the Assistant Superintendent Charles Zabremski appear at this meeting to discuss how the $2.5 million that was recently transferred to the school department has been spent in regards to hiring back teachers.
Councilors, make a motion to have Councilman McLaughlin.
Mr. Chairman, before I make the motion to invite the sponsor up, I'd like to just congratulate our President, Della Sola, for appointing you to this very important committee. You know how to run a meeting. I appreciate it with my years of experience.
This is a bouquet, thank you.
No, you deserve it. I'd like to make the motion, Mr. Chairman, to invite the sponsor of this, Mr. Councilman McLaughlin.
Councilman McLaughlin, please come before us. Just have him read, okay. Gentlemen, could you please just introduce yourselves, just for the viewing public?
Charles Zabremski, Assistant Superintendent of Business Affairs for the
Thank
Everett
you.
Public Schools.
Kevin Shaw, Assistant Superintendent of Schools.
Thank you.
Council Michael McLaughlin.
Thank you. Councilman McLaughlin,
Thank you,
what's
Mr.
your pleasure on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This is informal, by the way, gentlemen, until Mr. Simonelli gets here, so.
So, earlier this year, we had had the opportunity to appropriate additional funding to the school department to help with classroom sizes and to help with some unforeseen expenses throughout the school district. My colleagues and I took the vote to support the schools, rightfully so we should have. And I just wanted to get an update of how the money was being spent to prove or to show that these gentlemen in the administration, that what they said they were going to do is what they did, and that is bring teachers back and bring back employees to the school department that were so much needed. So I asked for just a discussion tonight about how things have been going over the last few months. Mr. Zabremski, as he always does, presented us with great information, really detailed a lot of the questions that I would have asked tonight. There's a lot of detailed information, but just kind of hearing where we are, Mr. Zabremski, if you don't mind just giving it.
Yeah, I'll go through the handout, the first handout briefly, which is this one, and then Mr. Shaw will go through the second handout.
This one, Charlie?
Yes. So as you can see, there's a total of 62 employees that were hired since the $2.5 million additional appropriation was appointed. Most of these were hired after Thanksgiving, in between January 1st. There were 39 teachers in total hired, additional, 2 guidance counselors, 2 crisis therapeutic interventionists. Those individuals work at the Devon School. 2 paraprofessionals or teacher aides, 2 additional Spanish translators, 5 additional custodians, and 1 part-time worker at the high school to help out the deans at the high school. So there's a total of 62 individuals for a little bit more than the $2 million. So there's still some of that $2.5 million left. If you turn to the second page, it lists the individuals that were hired. If you look at this, not the first name, but the second name, the reason there's no money next to that individual is that individual was already on the payroll. We just transferred her to like a substitute or unassigned position to a permanent position at the Webster School Extension. So that her salary was already accounted for. So I just wanted to show you that we did, where there's no salaries, those people are already on the payroll, but we transferred them around. That's why we show the new position.
Rehires,
So like the first one is a brand-new hire, if you
Yep.
look at it on the list. What her salary would have been if she started the first day of school, but since she was hired later in the year, what the prorated
So the
salary is.
new designates the new hires?
That's correct.
Okay. And then the rehires would designate, they were brought back?
They were individuals that were previously laid off, and we couldn't afford to bring them back at the time, but we thought the principals or the assistant principals thought they were qualified individuals, so we decided to bring them back.
Sure.
So out of that 62 individuals, there are 20 of them that reside in the city of Everett. So almost a third of those individuals reside in the city of Everett. I don't know if there's additional questions or information
I do
needed.
have a couple, Mr. Obrimski, if you don't mind. So, Mr. Obrimski, it's...
Go ahead, Counselor.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. Just 2 things. The custodians at 5 positions. So how many custodians does that bring us up to total in this system?
I believe the total number of custodians right now, full-time workers, is 34.
34. And is that sufficient for the foreseeable future on custodians? We won't be hiring any additional?
At this point, we wouldn't be looking for any additional custodians. Mr. Bond and I actually, about a week and a half ago, went to a number of the buildings. The buildings are very clean, even with the winter and the rock salt. The custodians were doing an excellent job. There is no need to hire any additional custodians at this point in time. Even Mr. Bond, who, if you don't know, is the new director of maintenance since Mrs. DeFeo passed away. We even changed some of the hours of custodians to work a little later into the night because it's easier to clean the buildings without the students in there. So he's doing an excellent job managing that department.
Mr. Obrimski, in your breakout, does it show where these 5 custodians, because it's one of the questions I have been asked, which is that the money was for teachers, we brought back custodians, which I believe we needed. I was just wondering if they're identified of what schools they have gone to.
We have not on this list.
Not on this list, they are not identified on this list. But they are listed on the 3rd page, Mr. McLaughlin at the bottom.
I do see that.
But then the schools are not identified.
And Mr. Obrimski, one additional question is, how do we maintain?
Counselor, could you just speak up a little bit more so I can
I
hear?
apologize. For screaming about the Patriots last night, I'm losing my throat. I apologize. Mr. Obrimski, how do we maintain a staff level next year and going forward that we have currently, so that we can ensure that we do all we can to keep classroom sizes manageable and not overzealous or succeed?
Mrs. Gauthier, their interim superintendent, myself, and Mr. Shaw have met with Mr. Demas and the mayor and the mayor's staff a couple of times in regards to the budget for next year, now that the governor's first budget came out. We have made our intentions known to them, what we would need to keep the present staff, and if we were to hire additional staff beyond the present staff, what that would come out to. So we actually just had another meeting with them today, and we brought all the principals with us. So if there were any questions for an individual building, they were able to ask those individuals. So it's a little too early. I don't want to answer for the mayor and Mr. Demas, the chief financial officer, but I think after our conversation today, in the next 2 weeks, we'll probably have some more conversations in this regard. But at this point in time, we would need additional funding beyond net school spending to keep the staff that we presently have. Now, that's a little iffy because right now, as you well know, we're still in negotiations with the teachers. So depending on where we go with that, could be higher or lower than what we had a conversation. Depends what we end up settling on with the teachers when we finally do settle the contract negotiations. We do have another meeting Wednesday night.
So, and just to follow up on that, I don't want to see what happened here last year, which is that the room gets filled with teachers and we have to have a tug of war to be able to protect our teachers, because they're the ones on the front line protecting our students. So we shouldn't be in that predicament, and I don't want to see it. That's why I'm trying to just figure out where we're headed so that we're not back in that predicament next year or in future.
And I don't believe that would happen at this point. We've had some great conversations with the mayor, Mr. O'Donnell, the chief of staff, and Mr. Demas in regards to what we think we need to run the school budget, where we might be able to cut some money, you know, that we've spent in areas in the past. So I think we have an open dialogue going with the mayor's office, and I don't foresee a major issue with the budget process as it chugs forward. And hopefully, when the House and the Senate get to do their portion of the budget, they may add to the Chapter 70 funding, which 70% of Everett's money comes from the state.
70% of
70%,
Everett's money
yep.
comes from the state.
Right.
And I know the senator is always fighting for additional funding, as he did last year, to get money after the governor's budget. Stobinski, the additional 500,000, a little less than 500,000. Do we have any idea of where that's going to go? If we're done hiring staff now, will we hold that over to additional year? We
are still looking at this point to hire a few more individuals. We have a couple of issues at a couple of schools. We just haven't been able to find the right candidate yet. There are some individuals who graduated in December from undergrad, or some from grad school, that we're still hoping to look at. I had this conversation with Mr. Demas today. You know, we're working with the mayor's office. If there is additional funding, to spend it, or maybe not spend it, in the best way that we can. Doesn't necessarily mean because you have the money you always have to spend it.
Right.
But we're working with the mayor's office so that if there is any money left, we use it in the right way. Or we work with the mayor's office not to use it. We're in conversation with them right now in regards to that.
Can we keep it in salary line items for next year? So we've obviously increased our employment numbers. Can we lay it over till next year by just?
I believe by state law, whatever we didn't spend this year, we would have to get turned back to free cash, and if we'd have to ask for it back out of free cash for next year. That's my understanding of state law.
I'm done with my question. I just want to thank both of you for what you do every day for our students, and thank you for your leadership on behalf of these teachers, getting them back in the classrooms if my colleagues have other questions.
All set, Counsel? Councilman Matusky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's nice to see 20 of these 62 are from Everett.
That's correct.
And the reason why they're not all from Everett is because they have educational expertise in different fields. And
If you go back 25, 30, 35 years ago, most of the teachers that we hired, I'm going to say better than 90% probably were from Everett. There just isn't enough qualified candidates and certified candidates out there to be able to do that anymore. Obviously, we always give first priority to an Everett individual, whether it's an administrator, a teacher, custodian, paraprofessional, or clerk. You know, if they're qualified, we do our best effort to hire individuals that live in Everett first.
well, that's a good policy to hire Everett first. But most of these teachers were on the payroll at one time or another, no? They are all brand new.
Some of them are brand new.
Some of them are brand new, but
Yep.
that's for the student population that grew.
That's correct, and Mr. Shaw has a presentation that he can go through if you'd like, that
Okay. I
shows you
wanna
how we
stay-
reduce class size.
I just want to stay on the resident policy just for a minute here. One of the papers recently came out with, your feeling on the new superintendent should live in Everett, is that it?
That would be my feeling. I think you have a more vested interest in the community. If you do your business here, you go to the bank here, you go to Walgreens here, you're even going down the park. You see the residents, you know, I live in Everett, I've resided in Everett my whole life. I think that you have a more vested interest in the community if you reside here than somebody from the outside.
Well, I agree with that. And did I read that there was 11 candidates potentially that
Is
could qualify?
14 individuals
Oh,
that
14.
work for the Everett Public Schools right now that have the superintendent's license that would all, under state law, qualify for the position.
Are they teachers now?
Some are teachers, some are administrators.
And let me ask you this, continue on in that article, it said that some of the school committee members believe it should be a worldwide search type of deal?
I mean, I don't want to answer for all the school committee members, but was said at the meeting that we had last Monday night, I believe it was, at the school administration building, was that they want to open the search across the country, see what kind of resumes they get, and then they will form a committee, and then the 9 elected members of the school committee will choose who the next superintendent is.
Okay. Well, you've cleared that up. And I just want to bring up, Councilman McKinnon and I, 3 years ago, in another committee that we're on, suggested that there was members, candidates, I should say, that don't live in the city that are on the school committee. Are you aware of that?
No, I am not.
You're not. You're probably the only one not aware of it. I've discussed this with several people, even on the way in here tonight. I just found this out a week ago. There's a member of the school committee that's lived in Newburyport for at least the last 4 to 5 years. Now, you don't know anything about it, Mr. Shaw?
I do not.
Well, that's fraud. You're supposed to live here if this is true. Now, I don't know if the school committee member brought this up at your last meeting.
No,
But it's not
hasn't been brought up at a school committee meeting.
It's not the best-kept secret in town. Okay, this has got to stop. That's one member. Is that that's not your priority,
Well,
to look into that?
Counselor, on this, we may want to stay germane, but I'm giving you leeway on it. But we may want to request some information from them on that, if
I think I'd like to
that's what
do
the
that,
pleasure is.
Mr. Chairman. I only bring this up because it was brought to my attention by a school committee member last week, and I was shocked. If you serve in any elected position, you're supposed to live in the city that you got elected in.
no, I agree with you.
Okay, so after the meeting, I will make a motion on that.
Make a motion to request that information from them, and then we
Okay.
can bring them back.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Councilman Simonelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to our invited guests, a couple of questions. What's the starting salary pay for the custodians?
It's about 52,000. Well, it might be, maybe 52,500.
And what is the total monies for the overtime account for custodians?
Total amount allotted for this fiscal year was $140,000 for overtime.
Make a comment? This is to the new superintendent? This is to the new superintendent?
Yeah, I think the comments.
You have a list of candidates, but the school committee already knows who. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. You all set, Counsel? All right. I have a couple of questions. The formula that we were actually trying to go after within the state, was that killed in the House? You know?
Right
The-
now, it's being discussed again, now that the Senate and the House have reconvened in a new session. The formula is being discussed by both branches right now in regards to changing it. I don't know if it's going to be for fiscal '20 or fiscal year '21. It appears as though there is going to be something done. If you talk to Representative McGonigal and Senator DiDomenico, it's just a matter if the final change will be for fiscal '20 or fiscal '21. But it does appear that something is going to be done, and the formula will be changed in some way, shape, or form.
And that'll be, what, 2020, 21?
Well, we're not sure at this point. I
Most likely.
don't believe they're sure at this point.
Okay. So right now, we're still going under the premise of the old way that they cut out the forms that we used to fill out diligently. No, you guys did a great job at doing that. That's how we got funding in the first place. Without that formula in place, are we going to be facing the same scenario that we did last year?
Well, there is some talk going around from some of the superintendents and the Superintendents Association that there wasn't enough money put in for the economically disadvantaged and low income by the governor. So that's something that the House and the Senate are going to work on. How much money that will be in addition to what the governor proposed, I don't know at this point.
Wouldn't it
But there
be-
is some talk that may be additional money, but I just don't know what that amount will be.
For our city, would it be somewhere in the area of like 6.5 million or something?
Oh, I don't think it would be that high.
No.
I don't
Okay.
think it would be that high.
Because we were doing, I went over a class on Saturday with Greg Cooch.
Glenn Kuchar.
Glenn
Glenn
Kuchar
Kuchar.
from Mass
And,
Association.
and basically, we were going over different scenarios, different formulas and stuff like that,
Right.
and all day long, so.
Right.
But,
If they change the entire formula to what it should be, and what was recommended by a committee that was formed, we would get an additional $19.5 million. But I don't think that number is realistic for fiscal '20, maybe for '21.
for 21.
But there will be some adjustment for '20, I believe, but until the House and the Senate finish their portion, I just couldn't tell you what it is yet.
They don't account enough for the English language learner students is what happens. Special education and
EL,
English language.
what do they call them, EL?
ELL,
ELL.
or ELL,
Okay.
English language learners. So those, they're underreported, they're underaccounted for when they're doing the fiscal part of that. So although we might have 1,500 students, and we're supposed to receive additional funding for those 1,500 students, the state, with the formula, the way it currently is, they might only give us funding for 900 of those students, rather than the full effect. So that's one of the change the urban superintendents are working on with the legislature to try to change that.
Now, the reporting is because of immigrations, DACA, all that stuff, correct? They're not reporting because of that?
No,
or-
we're still reporting it. We're reporting the English language learners. We test
Okay.
the students are tested and categorized by access testing every year. So the students are in fact reported, but the state, when they do the funding formula is not based on actual numbers. The funding formula is based on an algorithm that they made up back in 1993 that they've never adjusted anything for. So that's why those people are underreported.
Now, was it failure to report? How many do we have that are in classrooms now that aren't reported?
We have English language Mr. Obremski and I have been working trying to separate what we actually get funded for as opposed to what we really have in the classrooms. And with that algorithm, we're trying to differentiate and separate those numbers, because with the English language learner students, for example, if a student is in grades K through 5, we get a certain allotment of additional
Sure.
funding for them.
That
If it's
means
6
money
through
coming to
8,
the city.
Right, more money comes in for them, or it's 9 through 12. So we're just breaking that down now to see exactly where the breakdown was that they're not counting. I'd say there's at least probably 500 kids that are not accounted for in the ELL department.
Okay. And what other departments? Would
Special
they-
education is underreported as well, because they don't use actual figures of special education students within the school. They use this formula that they developed a long time ago that says if you have 7,200 students in your school, X percentage of those students should be classified as special education students. But so many things have changed since 1993 to now, and that formula has never changed to keep up with the increasing population of special ed students
How many, so we have 500 on the ELL?
that are probably
And then-
underreported in ELL. We're probably losing a couple of $1 million in special education as well.
And on the low income and free and reduced lunch fund, like you were talking about the lunch funds previously, Councilman McKinnon, we think we're underreported by about 1,500 students, which would be between $6 and $8 million.
That's huge.
Because they're
Right.
afraid to go on SNAP and TANF and the state mandated programs that you have to be on, because
They
some
don't
of them
want
are
to report
undocumented.
because of,
Right.
That's
The
where we're losing the
situation they're in.
reporting because of that. And as well as, within the first 5 years of arrival in the country, they're not eligible as well. So after they're here for 5 years, then they become eligible, so.
Okay. Well, that's a shame, but I think we need to count on this formula. And there's been legislation that has actually been filed for this, the formula that we're trying to do with the
There was a
lunch.
foundation review commission that was put together by the Superintendent's Association and the Governor's Office to come up with some recommendations on what the funding should be. That report has already been published.
Is there new filings of legislation, though, to adopt this?
They haven't filed legislation yet, no, to change it. So the Foundation Budget Review Commission has made their recommendations, and now they're working on, I don't believe that there's been new legislation filed for it.
Okay. So there's no number, House number, no Senate number that would,
Not right
we would look at?
Not to my
Not right
knowledge.
now.
Okay. Let me see, the other question that I have before I get to you, Councilman McLaughlin, would be, with the addition of the 2.5 million and the hirings, and new hirings and rehirings, has class sizes come down due to that?
They have, in that second packet that I gave you, we don't have to go through each of the schools, but that second packet that I gave you,
Just give us an overview.
it outlines all the classrooms in each of the schools where we put an additional teacher in.
Yep.
And for the majority of those classes, class sizes were at 30, 31, or 29. With the additional of opening up a classroom in each of those, brings those class sizes down to 20, 22, 23, 21, 22, 23, basically.
So it's more manageable numbers at that point?
100%,
Okay.
100%.
So we did do some good with that?
Yeah, 100%, absolutely, yep.
All right. And then what percentage of the, of staff, and I don't know if you have this or not, but if you're going to be coming back on that question that Councilman Matusky had asked, what percentage of staff actually live in Everett?
Out of all the individuals who work for the school department, there's a little bit, about 230 out of about 950.
Okay.
So 230, 240 out of 950.
Thank you. Councilman McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Obremski, Mr. Shar, we went to a meeting at Malden High School a few weeks back. Council Del Sol, myself, and both of you were there. Many of the administrators were there, and it was similar off of the same class that Councilor McKinnon attended on Saturday morning. But the commission that was created or done at the State House, it really took just one individual to give the green light to be able to close up the gap, and that would have been Speaker of the House, DeLeo. My concern is if we're at $19 million or $19.5 million today, that number is going to just continuously increase year after year to be getting bigger. So unless the House does something meaningful to be able to put money towards this budget now, this number is we're never going to catch up. We're never going to get to a standard that we're able to provide education at the quality that we should be, because the gap is never going to.
The gap will continue to grow.
It's going to continue to grow. So we really need Representative McGonigal to get on the speaker and to be able to put pressure to be able to help us get the speaker to understand that the 14 or 16 communities that are really impacted by this are really impacted by this. And this isn't just talk. This isn't just hearsay. It's real numbers, and it's real functions of the school department that are being hurt because of this gap that is just continuously growing. Do you both agree with that statement?
And the gateway cities bore the brunt of that.
Thank you, Mr.
The
Shaw.
14 gateway cities bore the brunt of that. But with the Foundation Budget Review Committee, they've actually come up with the changes that I talked about earlier that will affect the entire state of education across everybody. So, but we have certainly borne the brunt of the miscalculations based on the formulas as they exist now.
And I know that you had called me, or we had a conversation in regards to the charts that were in that packet that were passed out at Malden High School. Those are charts that Mr. Shaw said we're working on right now.
Sure.
Should be done in the next day or two. I'm just checking them to make sure they're accurate compared to what they should be, and then I'll have them up. Mr. Demas actually asked me to put them together for him, because he's working on getting some additional funding from the state, and then I will make sure I get them to you.
Okay, yeah, no, that would be great, Mr. Chair. And again, excuse me, and again, just everybody working together, I think, is what we really needed to start to do to be able to not have a situation unfold like unfolded last year. For anybody, it's not healthy, it's not productive. So if we continuously work together, we'll all be on the same page. The administration, your administration, the mayor's office, and the city council. And again, even, I know the administration met with the principals today or this week. I'd even ask that you guys maybe set up a meeting for the city councilors to meet with the principals and to be able to hear firsthand from them what's concerning to them in their building, what they need, what is on the top priority list for them. So maybe at some point we can set up a committee of the whole, or whatever the case might be, to be able to have that conversation. Everybody working together, it grows the city in a meaningful way and is able to be productive and not counter-reactive.
Councilor, you all set?
Thank you.
I have one more question. And then, gentlemen, you have to get to a meeting.
Yeah, we have a school committee meeting at
6:30?
6:30.
Okay, so if you could be brief, Councilman Simonelli? Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you for Councilman Simonelli. Two short questions.
yeah.
Will the school department be requesting any more money from the city before the next fiscal year?
The school department will not be requesting additional funds before June 30th to get us through this fiscal year. No, we will not be.
Well, that's good, Mr. Chairman, because we have no more money to give. We need the money for our city.
According to the papers, we have tons. So don't worry about it, we got plenty.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, but according to Councilman Simonelli, we need the money for our city.
Thank you for that. Are you all set, Counselor? Are you all set? Yeah. Okay. Excuse the customary thanks. Thank you for appearing
you.
tonight, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
And what's your pleasure on the piece, gentlemen? This is formal now. Reason being is we
Before
did not have a quorum at present, but we do now.
Before
So-
Mr. Shaw or Mr. Abramsky leave, I just want to capitalize on what I said earlier. It's the best-kept secret in town. You guys don't know about it. The school committee
Yeah, until we
would like to know who lives in Everett
just refer it back.
that's on the school committee and where they live, because it's a
I'm gonna put it
well-known
on the
fact
general
that there's a member of the
calendar.
school committee that is illegally serving on the school board that lives in Newburyport or Gloucester. I just heard this a week ago. If it was one of these members of the city council, we'd be off the board tomorrow. This has been going on for a few years. It's not a mystery here. Let's get to the bottom of it. This is no grudge against anybody. It's the law. Okay? Please look into that.
Thank you, gentlemen, for appearing. Counselor, on that, to the motion, what you're going to need to do is, we're going to refer this back to sponsor, this piece here, and then they want you to introduce on our general council calendar, so that we can have
Okay, our
that
clerk is
going
here.
to committee.
Our legislative aid, and you can put that on for the next meeting, that the school department look into the possibility that a school committee member has not lived in the city. I don't know if it's a year, 2, 3, 4. According to some people, it's quite a long time. Okay, so I just want to get it straight. If it was a member of this city council, they'd be off.
So,
committee.
do a motion to refer this piece back to sponsor, and you'll reintroduce that on the new
Yes,
calendar.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like
general
to make a
business.
motion to refer this piece back to sponsor. I want to thank Mr. Abramsky and Mr. Shaw for their very informative information that we received. It's great to see the classroom sizes are now manageable for these teachers and the aides that work there. We went through a tough year here in this chamber 2 or 3 times last year with a packed chamber here, okay? They've got a budget to work with, and hopefully, yeah, they can manage that. So with that, I'd like to refer it back to sponsor.
Motion made and seconded to refer back to sponsor. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. You have done so. Please read item
All
number,
right.
let me do one so we can
Yeah,
get that out.
this out.
Yeah.
Item number 1, this order of by Council Mike Casey, that the city eliminates the water enterprise fund.
Make a motion to put
I'd like
this
to make
over.
a motion to keep this in committee until Councilman Marchese is back.
Motion made and seconded to keep this into committee and have Councilman Marchese here for this piece. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Move to do number 3 on the
Yes.
calendar.
Item number 3, this is a transfer, order to transfer, offered by Council Richard Delasola as president, that the Everett City Council approve an order to appropriate $300,000 for the CIP stabilization fund to the city clerk's archives account.
Make a motion to have city clerk before us. Motion made and seconded to have the city clerk before us. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. Please state your name and title, sir.
Hi, I'm Sergio Canelio, the city clerk here in the city of Everett.
Thank you for appearing tonight.
Thank
Could
you
you
for
give
having
us a brief description on what you're looking for?
Sure. I think Mr. Demas could, if he could come up with me also, he can understand the fund, he can explain
Motion
the
made and
funding more
seconded
than
to
I
have
can.
Mr. Demas before us as well. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Demas, just for the record, give us your name, title.
Eric Demas, CFO.
Thank you.
So, pretty briefly, as you know, my job as city clerk encompasses many different titles, one of them being city archivist. So I archive everything to do with the history of Everett. Dating back to 1870, I hold every document somewhere in the basement in the city's archives or in my safe in the city clerk's office. It's becoming to a point where I have no more room. The building doesn't have any more room to fit, encompassing these boxes. We have many records, especially ones that have to do with Mr. Demas's office or mine, that are considered permanent documents. Those are payroll documents, any of our other historical documents, every law we've ever passed, any ordinance, every rule. Those are all permanent records. I'm having trouble finding space for it going forward. This would help me alleviate that space. It's a two-part plan. One would be to scan all documents, microfilm or microfiche, it's called, these documents, put them on these little discs. So that would be our new permanent record instead of having paper, and those could be placed aside.
Who's the company?
We're looking at a few different companies, but they're all on the state bid list. So Inception would be the company that we're looking at for our scanning and microfiching. And then I have two companies that I'm looking at, and this is the second part of my plan, is I'm still going to need to archive boxes, at least temporarily, and especially some permanent ones. Certain things cannot be microfilmed all the time. They have to be kept on paper. So the other second part of my plan is to renovate the safe in my office, to put these new type of rolling racks. They are much more efficient. They hold the boxes correctly. Right now, all the racks we have gaps like this. So when everything fits perfectly, you can add a couple hundred boxes to my safe.
What's the cost on part two?
Yep. So there are a few costs. The first cost, and this is rough, so that's why we're asking for $300,000. The first cost is $228,000 is the first quote that we got. That's for the microfilming, scanning.
That's for
and
Inception?
Inception, and for the cloud services. This is also counts, there will be a reoccurring cost, but this upfront cost will give us
Yearly.
3 years of the licensing for our, I'm going to explain that.
Okay.
For the cloud service. Yearly, yes, we still have to have a cloud-based software. So to hold all of our documents, there will be a yearly fee, anywhere between $4,000 and $6,000 to have them host our cloud services. And going forward, on occasion, I will still have to microfilm and scan documents, but that will be in a lesser fashion. It will be less and less money as we go forward. This is going to handle the brunt of the city's documents.
Your office will oversee all this?
Correct. It's going into my, Mr. Demas handles the money, but I'll handle the contract with him and make sure everything's done in accordance with the law.
Okay.
But yes, I'm the city archivist, so I have to take responsibility for all documents. Part two of the plan, there are two quotes that we received. One gives us a little more space than the other, but they are quite different prices. One is $59,000, and the other was $36,000. This is to add the shelving in the safe, and I think you should have the pictures, right, to kind of get an idea of what we have. This is very efficient. They slide. These are going to be for all the city laws, everything dating back to 1870, all the birth, marriage, and death records that I have to hold, and those can not be microfilmed. They have to stay on paper.
Sure.
So there's certain things like I stated. This is going to be a huge help for me going forward, and it's not just about space. Currently, I'm also the Super Records Access Officer, so under the state's new law from 2 years ago, the city had to designate somebody as the Records Access Officer, or the clerk would automatically do it. So I am the Super REO along with Ms. Mejia in the solicitor's office. To find documents, to go back through payroll, so you want to retire, and you worked in the rec department 30 years ago. I have to go into the archives, find those boxes.
Good luck with that.
We do it, but it's very time-consuming.
Yeah.
This program will allow me to hit the word find, and we'll use your last name, hit McKinnon. Anybody that worked for the city of Everett on the payroll records will come up, and then I can scan through, or I can put Leo McKinnon, and it'll go through it. It's much more efficient.
Yeah.
It's going to save a lot of time and a lot of money going down the road. I mean, this will be a year or two process to get this completed.
Was there a cost analysis to it that you did?
I'm going to have a further cost analysis for you, but this is just preliminary stuff. Yes, sir.
Did his office do, Mr. Demas's office, did you do a cost analysis on this, or is it planned to see how much the savings would be to impact it? Offset it, we should say.
Yeah, so there's not really going to be any savings, if you will, other than the man-hours that it takes to go ahead and try to locate this document. What it's going to do, though, some of the benefits that it gains us is that it allows us to give quicker access to the information, statutorily. If we get a records request, we have a finite number of days
10 days.
in which to respond. In addition to that, we may not always be in this building. Right now, we've exceeded our storage capacity where we keep the archives as we're required to by statute. Should this building ever move, should we run out of space, going this route will allow us to store everything that we're allowed to in the cloud, which would lower our costs from having to maintain such a
Bring it
large
up to the
footprint.
20th century anyway.
Right.
Not dinosaur stage.
So really, the operational costs that you're looking at, if you really want to do a cost analysis, it would be based upon an estimate of the city clerk's man-hours on a given year versus what our annual costs are. The big piece is the capital piece up front to make this conversion. Maintaining it is much cheaper and more efficient moving forward.
Reason why I ask is because there'll be 45 questions on our regular council meeting night.
Correct, and that's why I want to give
And
you as
that's
much
why I'd like to
information
get it
now
out of
and
the
then.
way now.
100%, and
You
I
know?
agree with you, and that's why I want to make sure you understood why I need it. I don't come before you very much
No,
for
you don't.
any increased monies. But this is something that's very important, not just for me, but for our community. I'm not always going to be the city clerk. Somebody still needs to come into this place, be able to find everything. It's very difficult to go through these type of boxes, not just for me and my staff. And they're not maintained, they're maintained well for what we have, but
It'll
they're
make
not
it more
maintained
efficient.
in perfect condition. So I'd like to preserve them going forward, and this is the best way to do it, rather than renovating the archives downstairs, because that's still 150. I looked at quotes, just to get an idea. That was 160 to 180,000 to put shelving down there. But at some point, that still runs out. This is the better way to go for the long term.
So, in terms of financing this, how would this come out in financing,
Mr.
Mr.
Demas?
Demas? How would we do it? Would we just put the money towards it, or
Well,
would it
my
go towards the
recommendation
grants?
was, rather than, typically all of our capital projects, our capital improvements, we usually fund through issuing debt, issuing bonds. In
So this would come out
particular-
bonded?
Well, in this particular case, I'm not recommending
Okay.
that the city go out and bond these funds. The city does have a capital stabilization account. One of the reasons why this would be a project that I don't want to actually issue debt on is because
Small.
it's a lot of service that's being provided. Granted, we're going to have this system moving forward indefinitely, but it's not like we're going out and buying a truck. The majority of the cost that we would be spending is going to be on services, man-hours of this country, of this company, going through, scanning these documents, getting them set up into the software, into the cloud, and then maintaining it. It's not your traditional capital expense, which is why I would, am making the recommendation that we don't bond it. I would hold all of our bonding options for actual physical capital improvements.
Okay. And what's in the capital stabilization fund now?
It's
We have a lot of room.
It's a little, we have plenty of room in there. It's a little over, don't quote me, 3 million, but I can get you the
Okay.
exact number for tomorrow.
Thank you. Councilman Matusky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to be clear, the company that wins the bid, I should say, or that you give the bid to, they're going to do the document work?
So that, yes, the company handles all the documents. They scan them, they log them, because they know the algorithms, right? So they put it into certain categories, auditors and stuff, and then they'll divvy it up and split it up correctly. And then there'll be access for each
So it'll be-
individual department will have access to their own
Death
records.
certificate department?
Yeah, so the city clerk, so myself and the city attorney will be full administrative authorization, because we're allowed to see all documents. Then each department will be able, DPW will be in charge of DPW, they'll have access, ISD will have access to theirs, but myself and the attorney
That'll
will
all
have
be
access.
able to come together? It seems like a lot of work.
It is, and that's why these companies
So that's-
specialize in this.
They're going to come here and do it?
Oh, yeah.
Take the
Yes. A
material
lot of them
out.
will take the material out. They'll have to, they take small amounts at a time, sign off. There's a specific procedure through the Secretary of State's office that I have to follow. And just so you know, I didn't just come up with this idea. I've reached out. There's 350 other city and town clerks, and about 60 of them have done this service already through different companies. And on Thursday, I'll be meeting with the city clerks across the state again, just to go into some other further detail with them about some of their services, because I want to look at a few companies. I don't want to just
Rush
pick
into
the
it.
first one.
That
Right.
makes sense. And presently, the archive department, is that in the basement?
Yes.
Wayne?
Well, it's two. The majority of the archives are locked in a room in the basement. And
It's a
the re-
safe?
It's not a safe.
I heard it was, I have
But
never
it's-
been in
it's-
there, but
it's-
I heard
It's a locked room that I'm in control of solely.
I mean, I go back to Paul Ellard, the
Yeah.
assistant, he was the archivist.
Yep,
I
yep.
mean, how many years ago was that? And he told me that room was, that's 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And he
It's
told
the
me
same
you
room.
couldn't put another thimble in there.
Right, so just so you know, under Mayor Hanlon, he had done some renovations. At the end of his clerkship and into his term as mayor, he did some renovations and they added some room, so it's not
Cleaned it up
as
a bit.
bad as it was. The rest of the archives are considered my safe. That's where the most historical documents are, and all the laws, birth, death, and marriage records.
So right now, a resident,
permanent ones, right.
anybody that comes to do business in the city clerk's office
Mhm.
seeking information, you have to go through all this paperwork?
Myself or my staff.
Or you, somebody in the office has
Yes.
to do that, and it takes time.
Yep, even if the city attorney needs something, I take
That
her
could take a
down.
couple days,
We go into
no?
the archives and follow, yeah, yes.
You don't just run down to the,
I'm going to just tell you right now, we have 20 people that are looking for their retirement records. We've done 4, and it's taken a month. I mean, and then we don't move very slowly, but they're,
that's
you know,
interesting that you say that, because you can go back to anybody that worked,
payroll
the city,
records
how
are
many
permanent
years?
records. Since payroll records should go close to 1870, yeah.
and the reason for they're looking for that is,
Pension, I mean, no one looked back to 1870, but in the 1970s, 1960s, many people looked to buy back their time. So if, you know, use an example, if you worked down the rec a few years, right, and you
even
wanted
for
to...
one day?
Even for one day, right? You can buy back any amount of time as you want. So many people as children worked, you know, summer jobs and so forth. Well, I got to go back, find their time, so that way they can get their pension. So they can buy that back to get
Because
their
I
allotted
remember
pension.
years ago.
That's just one
I'm gonna call
scenario.
him soon, because I worked on the garbage truck.
See, I'm
I
giving a
shovel
lot of people
snow.
ideas here. But
I
that
shovel
was just
snow.
one example of what I do, what my office does, and that's very significant. But that's just one piece.
But no, I can see people looking into that, because everything does count. But I want to congratulate you for putting this forward.
Thank you.
Everett's moving in a fast-paced direction with development, and we're going to need all the help we can get. And I
Well,
think
this will be bringing us up to time.
this will bring us up to date, right, Mr. Chairman? And I'm glad you filled me in. I got the reports that you gave us. And as the chairman said, you'll probably have to do this again Monday, you know, at our next
Yeah,
council
and I just
meeting.
want to explain also, and finance has always become an issue, right? That was one of the biggest topics that came up the other night. I want to make sure you understand also, when free cash is certified, almost 50% goes into our stabilization accounts, roughly, splits into all the stabilization.
It's exactly 50. yeah.
Exactly 50%, excuse me. My office alone this year will bring in between 600,000 and 700,000. So 300,000-ish of my license fees and so on will go into stabilization, roughly, right? In essence.
We'll talk about it later.
Well, but however it works,
Wait a minute, let's
there
talk
is
about it
a
now.
significant amount more of money that will be coming through the city clerk's office than prior years. Last year, it was quoted roughly 320,000. Revenues are expected to double, with just over 100,000 just from the casino resort alone,
So it's almost self-funded.
is what I wanted to make a point.
Good.
So, if you feel uncomfortable with finances, there is other money just from my office alone that I'll be bringing in. And I know that was the question that night, so I wanted it in the minutes so they could understand that, you know, I'm doing my part as best I can.
Thank you for the information.
You're
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Simonelli, you have anything? Okay. Your pleasure on this piece, favorable action?
I'd like to excuse with the customary thanks.
Excuse customary thanks, thank you for appearing tonight.
Thank you,
And,
councilors. Thank you,
You know, for
councilors.
the
Thank you,
short
Mr. Davis.
period of time that our city clerk has taken this position, he's done a remarkable job. Wouldn't you agree, Mr.
He's been
Chairman?
taking the reins on a lot of positions,
he-
we'll say.
He really is all over the city, and he's doing, he's keeping an eye on various problem businesses, and it just, the whole gamut, so
Well, see, there's the youth
that's the
of our
youth
city
side,
running
right.
around
Well,
the
he's
city
got a lot
now.
of energy, you have to admit that.
Youths.
Yeah, he's got energy, and, we appreciate that as city councilmen, because anytime you call the office, he's right there, and of course, his able-bodied assistant, city clerk David Ragucci, is right on the ball also, and everybody in that office. But I'd like to refer this out with favorable action, and we've got information here. I know that, as you said earlier, this
It'll be-
will probably be a 45-minute discussion at the next council meeting, but
So bring your pillow. But, okay, recommendation for favorable action and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Please read item number 4.
All right, item number 4. There's a letter off by Council Richard Delasola as president that the Everett City Council approves the amount of $2,893,000 to be appropriated by borrowing as requested in the CIP general fund budget.
We already have Mr. Demus before us. Would you like any additional?
I'd like to make a motion to invite the city electrician, the planning,
Gentlemen, could we have you, all
Oh.
4 of you, come before us, please?
Mr. Lane is
Just
here also.
state your name and titles, please. Mr. Demus.
And if I may add to the chair, we had additional information that we were waiting on, that we now we're able to obtain and are requesting tonight to amend the original submission. And they deal with 2 specific items. Unfortunately, the fire chief couldn't be here tonight, but the largest of the item is for $500,000 for Central Fire Station. There is an existing bond authorization for Central Fire for improvements of approximately $2 million. We've moved forward with making those improvements. Right now, we are having a new roof being put on.
Which
and-
station?
Central.
Okay.
And as part of Phase 2, we've received information on how much it's going to cost us to replace the windows and the doors. And given the updated bid request from our original estimates when we put this together about 18 months ago, we need approximately an additional $500,000 to do that.
On top of the 2,893?
Well, yes, that's item 1. The total amendment will be for $595,000 for a total of $3,488,000.
3,400,000?
$488,000.
So
And there are 2 items, and
this is going to be amended, and then?
a request
Do we
for an
need to-
amended, yes.
Do we need to actually have them send that amendment in, or can we amend it now? Okay, we could still discuss it, though. As soon as you have that, Mr. Demus,
Yep.
could you get it to our clerk so that we can amend?
I will.
Okay.
So the other item, so that actually doesn't do a lot of cosmetic. What our focus is on Central Fire Station is to protect that building, is to protect the envelope. So the primary focus is the roof, the doors, and the windows. And based upon the new information that we received when we put Phase 2 out, to get the entire envelope protected, we're looking at an additional $500,000. The additional $95,000, and we have the DPW director, so when you actually address the DPW director's needs, we can address that there. But it's for an aerial truck that was part of the CIP for $95,000. And we'll give you the updated information tomorrow.
Okay, if we could have everyone just state your name and titles, please.
Good evening, Tony Sousa, Planning Director.
Thank you.
Good evening, Rich Connors, Wire Inspector.
Rick St. Louis, Director of DPW and Engineering.
That's what we're going to need now.
George Lane, Director of Facilities.
Thank you, gentlemen. And before we get started, do we have a breakdown that we can actually see of what we're looking at?
Sure, they were submitted. We can get copies for you.
Oh, this is the Inception one, I got it. Does anyone else?
Last meeting, but I don't have it now. I know
Do we have copies of it?
You can make a copy of mine if you'd like.
Mike, could you make, yeah. We're going to just make a couple of copies, so we'll give it a couple of seconds. Whoever wants to start, they could start, and then we'll catch up to where we are with the paperwork after.
Well, if I could recommend that Mr. Sousa goes first because he has a ZBA meeting and he only has one item.
Yep.
And his item is dealing with the expansion of the ornamental lights project.
Sure. So good evening. In essence, this request is to allow us, so currently, working with the team here, we're in the process of installing ornamental lights along the heart of Broadway, from Everett Square down to the Circle. These will complement the ornamental lights down in Lower Broadway that have been installed, or reinstalled, I should say. The light project for Everett Square, the ornamental lights, will go up to about the area of Hancock Street. This request, in essence, is for a Phase 2, if you will, which we take from Hancock Street all the way to the Malden line, all along Broadway. In essence, it's replacing the traditional Cobra headlights to, if you will, a better looking, more efficient fixture, again, identical to what's at Lower Broadway, and create some consistency, uniformity, and certainly be an enhancement as well. So the request is based upon the cost estimates that we received from Lower Broadway, I'm sorry, from the Everett Square project, and certainly it's not to exceed amount. We put it out to bid and take it from there. But in essence, it's to purchase the lights and to install them as well. Thank you.
Councilman Matusky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Mr. Sousa for also being here this evening. How many lights is that altogether? Roughly.
So it's approximately about 140.
140 lights?
Approximately.
Now, does that eliminate the street light itself?
So in essence, the gray lights are the Cobra headlights. Those would be removed. And the ornamental lights, the double fixture, same as on Lower Broadway, right, would be replaced. We would replace the Cobras with those. Same footing. Some of the footings have to be changed a little bit. Frankly, I'm looking out here at a Cobra head that, on a windy day, I know moves a little bit, right? So that would be certainly a requirement to upgrade the footings as well as needed.
And once they're installed, the city is responsible for the bulbs, for everything. There's no more National Grid, responsible, am I right?
So for the ornamental lights, we'd be responsible for those fixtures. We'll also have a few on hand as well for replacement. I would defer to
I see the city
Rich Connors, if I may.
Yeah, we'll have a little over 2,000 Cobra heads replaced, so on top of the decorative poles of 140, we'll have about 2,069 Cobra heads.
Well, I'm a little confused. What is a Cobra head?
So that would be on the wooden poles. The arm coming off of the wooden poles. We'll own every one of those and have to maintenance them.
So those will still be there?
The wooden poles.
The wooden pole, and these are additional. These replace the steel ones, is that it?
Correct, the ones that we have on Broadway.
Oh, they look very nice. I just, I like the ones on Lower Broadway, Mr. Chairman. They do look good, and they throw off a lot of light, do they?
Yeah, they're LED, and they're the newest style LED, which throws all the light down onto the street instead of up and around.
Because, we've had some issues over the last few years, I should say, without street lights out. But the electrical department, once they're installed, will be, there's a warranty, I would imagine, on most of this.
There is.
And this is the bulk of the money, right here on the lights, the ornamental lights.
It is.
In this package tonight, so. I like the looks of the lights, the ornamental lights, and I just hope that, well, I know we'll do, with our city electrician, I know we'll do much better than National Grid anyway, keeping them lit. And how long do these bulbs last for, just out of curiosity?
They're roughly 15 to 20 years.
The bulbs last that long?
Yes, the LED do, yep.
Wow. Well, that's good to hear. I'm around at that time, but well, it's
2.1.
Yeah, curiosity, what does a light bulb cost?
The light, it's a board, so you'd have to get the whole luminaire. So they're...
Package.
Yeah, the package. So most failures would be in the driver, which would, creates the electricity to the bulb. Yeah.
Good. Well, they have these in Charlestown, as you know, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
And, in the historical place, and Everett is going to be on the map shortly with people from all over the world and country coming here to visit our humble city, and I probably think it's the right thing to do to make Everett more welcoming and more historical looking than those ugly silver poles, so. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Actually, if I may,
Mr.
before you
Demas.
excuse them, there's another item that's related, which is why the electrical department is here, speaking on the exact same issue. And that
Mr.
is
Demas
for-
on this too as well. Before we can discuss the 500,000 amendment, we're going to need that to be put in. We can't discuss that, the 500,000, until it comes formally here to the committee.
That's
So-
fine.
Okay.
Nope, that's fine.
Yep.
Where I was going with this, though, is that in relations to the light project, one of the items on here is for the electrical department for a crane truck.
Crane truck, okay.
And a bucket truck, that's on the list. The reason being is, once we swap those out, we're gonna be responsible for maintaining them. And that's why the electrical department is here, so they can talk about why a new truck is needed versus the condition of our existing vehicle.
Okay.
Yeah, our existing vehicle, there's a height restriction on it. We can't get high enough to, repair the lights. Also with that, we're gonna need to, hoist up new light poles, which we haven't really had much to do with at this, till this point. So to set the new poles, we would actually have to lift them. We'd need a 1,000-pound crane attachment.
Councilman
And
Simonelli?
that's on the list for the bucket truck, and it comes with a 1,000-pound lift.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You got it.
To the invited guests. Why do we need the two more trucks for the two $40,000 ones?
That's not, that's not on this piece right now.
No,
It's on the piece, but we're trying to handle the electrical and the,
Oh, Mr.
Will you-
Chairman. so
you
just
hold
to-
them?
If you can answer that question that I asked Councilman Matusky, what is the replacement cost for the bulb? The apparatus? How much is,
Do you have the picture?
is it $85, $850, $8,000?
So, some retrofit kits to change a metal halide over to an LED is about $400, $450. I think that includes some labor in that, though, so it's likely
So
more of a-
25 years when it goes away, it's about 4 or 5, whatever the inflation rate is from now.
That would be with labor.
That's good. So that's that for that. We go back.
okay,
after.
yeah. We'll
Thank
jump into the other pieces
Yes,
when
sir.
they're out of here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple, I'd just like to ask you, the electrical department first. Once we take this on as a task for the electrical department, are you going to be all set to handle this? How many people do you have in your department now?
Yeah, we have 4 licensed electricians right now.
All right, and that's enough to handle what we're doing here, correct?
As Mr. Matusky said, we have the year warranty, and they last a good amount of time, so we're not looking to get overrun with repairs. So right now, I think we have enough to handle it.
Okay, so reason being why I ask is because this is going to be a question that's going to be probably posed at our general meetings, and they're going to be seeing if you're going to be requesting the positions and stuff like that to handle this type of material now that you're going to be handling, so that's why I'm asking.
Right now, we have the people to actually fill that equipment. so-
Okay.
To do the repairs.
And then, let me see, why are we just stopping at Hancock Street?
For the ornamental,
That's
Just for,
Phase 1 of the project.
where's Phase 2? Is it continue on
Phase
down
2 is-
Broadway?
Yes.
And
yes.
all the way down to the other square?
To the,
Seems like we're like forgetting about that end.
no, so it's going all the way to the Malden line, to our end.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure, because
To
I'm
our
down the
neighborhood.
other end, and I'm seeing these gray poles that are going up, and
Right.
no one wants to fix
It's-
them, and National Grid won't even come unless you beg them, and if you beg them, they don't come anyway, so.
No,
you
it's covering, if I may, it's covering the entirety of Broadway, so from Hancock all the way to the Malden line.
Okay.
So, and if I may too, also, just to add as well, with the LED conversion citywide, I believe the net saving per year is approximately roughly about 300,000 or so, and that's
So
important
that's
too.
300,000 net save on the,
300,000 per year
electrical.
because of the conversion, right, to an LED instead of the sodium lights. And that's important as, I think, as you're considering not only the ornamental project, but also obviously the vehicles as well. It essentially and truthfully does pay for itself. You just heard 15, 20 years, ROI, if you will, return on investment. So it's a great project that will be saving money.
Sure, as the time goes on, year
Correct.
by year. All right.
Correct.
And it's 300,000 per year?
Approximately, yes. And that's based on good numbers. It's been done before. We worked with MAPC with the LED streetlight conversion, and some, communities nearby have also benefited from savings as well. So it's well established.
I think with showing the savings aspect of it, that's where we need to be. So, thank you for that. Any other questions, gentlemen? Not on the two pieces that we already talked about. It was the bucket crane truck and the planning ornamental lights. Any questions on those? All right, excuse customary thanks. If you got to go to your meeting, sorry for holding you up. Thanks, Tony, for showing up. Any other questions now on the general piece? Councilman Simonelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you for Councilman Simonelli. Why the two more vehicles, the ones that are for 40? Why the two more vehicles, the ones that are the $40,000 vehicles?
Take care.
Sure. You want to let him go first, then he can leave?
George, you have to be at a meeting as well?
No, sir.
All right.
So we're requesting $40,000 for a multi-use administrative truck, pretty much like I'm doing with my pickup truck right now. So I have a pickup truck, an F-250. However, we got it heavy duty. Yes, I drive it pretty much every day, but if the guys need a vehicle, they're more than welcome to it if I'm doing office work, paperwork, anything like that. So this vehicle is serving the same purposes.
How many city vehicles do we have now?
In my department, we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 newer vehicles, and we have 3 other vehicles for janitors that were like a fire department rollover. They weren't using the vehicle anymore. That will suffice to get a janitor to and from his building with his supplies. We have one that was given to us from the DPW, an older vehicle that will suffice once again. The carpenters, the plumbers, they're constantly needing materials to and from buildings. The brick that we use down the new snack shack we built has to be moved around. We have to bring quite a bit of it back. This is the type of vehicle we can put some of those materials on, bring it back, but it also can serve. We have a new assistant administrator over there, Angelo Febo. It can also serve to get him to and from these buildings to check on things. He recently got all the equipment into the concession stand where we went back and forth, to and fro, also helping the plumber bringing stuff back and forth, and the same thing. This vehicle will serve the purpose for both uses, administrative and multi-use, for helping the guys also.
So, Mr. Chairman, through you to our guest.
Absolutely.
So the necessity of these vehicles was for what reason?
Help with the administrative. Right now, Mr. Febo actually drives his own personal vehicle to and from these job sites to check on things.
Is
You
he
know,
compensated for that, Mr.
Excuse
Lane?
me?
Is he compensated for that?
No.
So he's not compensated at all?
And you're also looking at the fact that, God forbid, anyone ever hits him or he gets in an accident, where are we left then?
Mr. Chairman, can't we use those vehicles that we have now? Can we use these vehicles that we have now?
The vehicles that I have in my department right now?
No, Yes. The old vehicles we have now, could we use them?
We still do.
We still,
We still do. So I have 17 people in my department, and we're talking about a department that only has 8 or 9 vehicles that, you know, we get through our working day.
Gentlemen, to the councilman out there, this is from last year's CIP, correct, Mr. Demas?
They are.
We already kicked this into effect. They're just looking for the funding sources now.
you're just asking.
Oh, yeah, no, that's
We're
fine.
asking why.
Ask as many questions as you want.
No.
This is a committee, and you can ask as many as you would like.
Agree or disagree, they've got to ask the question.
No 5-minute rule here.
Have to ask the question.
Absolutely.
So, to the director, so the vehicles that you have are taking away a lot of parking spaces in the Everett City lots. Is there
Yeah,
a
that's
specific
that's
reason?
not us.
That's not him.
We're up the old high school. We actually park inside the old high school.
Apologize. You're talking about all the city vehicles, and in particular ISD. So, okay. So, Mr. Chairman, through you for Councilman Simonelli, would not be voting for this in favor if the two vehicles that are the $40,000 vehicles aren't eliminated. Thank you very much.
Okay. Do you have anything, Mr. Matusky? Mr. Matusky?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I see some of the conditions of some of these vehicles. And, you know, for the safety of our employees, I mean, there was a time, I'm going back a few years ago, when we voted on some trucks, and, you know, there was some skinflints here at the time. These trucks didn't even have a clock in them. I mean, they were stripped, all there was an engine and a steering wheel. I mean, they wouldn't put a radio in it. I said, I mean, you know, but in this day and age, you know, these things, you have to have them today. I see the condition of some of the trucks, and I gotta say, Mr. Lane has brought this department to a different level. This is a new department, really an old department, but they do jobs, as you know, the Hancock Street Fire Station. That was your department?
No, that was done out through a bid. We did help and assist with quite a bit of it.
Right, well, that's my understanding.
We
Mr.
built a
Prenier was
temporary-
with you on that project? And the snack shack is coming along, is that right?
Yeah, that was fully under our, and actually, Mr. St. Louis got it going with the foundation work. We took over from there, got everything going, the walls up, the building.
I hear
built.
nothing but good things about your department. They're Everett people that know what they're doing. There's carpenters. You've got every trade with you, right?
Yes, well, the electricians are.
Oh, well, yeah, well. But I have to say that, you know, in this day and age, especially where you mentioned that one of the department, guys in the department is using his own truck. I mean, we got to, you know, that's got to stop. This man needs a vehicle that is owned by the city and that can, you know, have the right insurance and all that. And we need these trucks for the department. We're going to be quite, you know, people don't realize it, Mr. Chairman, but, you know, June 30th is quickly approaching. There's going to be thousands and thousands of people daily coming to our humble little city here. We have to be prepared. And I think these vehicles will be very, very necessary for your department because you'll be expanding all your duties, you know.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Matusky, Anthony Ferrante is my union supervisor. He quite often he checks up on the guys, make sure they have all their needs. He more often than not also jumps into his own private vehicle, and will have to drive around because there's just not another vehicle available.
Well, I'm in favor of these two new vehicles because you know, there's several reasons. You know, our city employees, they're probably the lowest, I shouldn't say lowest paid employees in the city, but the Department of Public Works, it's a lower scale starting. You know, you saw what some of these teachers make here tonight. But anyway, and they do a wonderful job, and I'm not putting any department down here. But I know the good work that you have done since you've been here now, what, 2-3 years?
I've been here 2 years.
Wow, time flies. It seems like just the other day you were coming up the hallway. But anyway, I'm in favor of this. Also, For your department, these will be strictly for your department?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm in favor of that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You got it.
And, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman, if
St.
I could
Louis?
just address Councilor Simonelli's
Sure.
comment. The vehicles that you were referencing parked in public lots are to a different department, ISD. They're a different type of vehicle used for a different purpose. These vehicles would tend to be pickup trucks or the like, which would serve more of a purpose in a DPW capacity.
Are you all set there, Counsel? Are you good? Okay. My question on it is, Mr. Lane, there was a question that we had up at the chair. Which, you mentioned one of the vehicles. Which vehicle was the one that you're going to be using for administrative? And then the other one?
Well,
There's actually only one vehicle listed for facilities that he's referring to.
Okay.
It's not multiple. The original question by Councilor Simonelli had to deal with 2 administrative vehicles. However, facilities is only requesting 1 administrative/multi-purpose vehicle.
Okay, so there's only one vehicle, or is there 2?
So the second vehicle is to house some of the equipment that I use in responding to emergencies, whether it's floodwaters at the Market Street Culvert or metal detectors and oxygen meters and different items that we don't entrust to the general trucks that we have.
And what type of a vehicle is it?
I believe that would be a pickup at this time.
It'd be a pickup, like 350 or something like that?
Something that has the ability to lock the equipment up securely.
Okay. And then yours, Mr. Lane, would be?
An F-250, similar to what I drive around, the white one.
And that's for, you have to bring your stuff with you as well, with
Yes,
your
sir.
job? Okay.
In, just if I may add, last year, we actually put a plow on my vehicle, not so I could plow. I drop it off to the guys. They
And then they
drive
go
my
up.
city vehicle. A lot of people have said, what are you putting a plow on your city vehicle for? And I got to remind them, it says Everett on the door. It's not my vehicle.
It's not Mr. Lane's, it's Everett's. Okay. Let me see. Now, the other question I have, and it's kind of a concern question, reason being is because if individuals are driving their own personal vehicles, are they covered by our city while they're doing that? If they're not insured by the city, they're insured by their own personal carrier. So we need to address that. That's the elephant in the room right now. How often are they doing that, and, what's going on with that?
Well, like I say,
Would they be covered, first of all, would they be covered?
I think we'd refer that to the solicitor's office. I believe an issue came up approximately a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if it was in Everett, but I remember hearing the discussion
Yeah.
about it. So I'm sure they have an opinion on it.
Okay, so they're going
In the order before you is one mechanism for us as a city to address this issue.
to address that, okay. I mean, because we don't want any of our employees, God forbid, something actually happened to them, there was a crash or whatever, and then they're not going to be covered due to the fact that they were in their own personal vehicle. That could be problematic, legally technical at that point, I would say. So if this is addressing that animal in a room, we sort of got to look at that aspect of it. So it'll address that issue, and there won't be any more of that activity going on once these 2 trucks come into effect?
Yes, sir, it will help immensely. We also, like I say, we just picked up a fire truck, one of their old Blazers, which also will,
Yep.
Mr. Febo was actually driving that around today,
Okay.
helping him so he didn't have to drive his own vehicle.
Sure. I mean, they shouldn't be driving their own vehicles anyway. You know what I mean? I understand that they want to get the job done and all that stuff, but now they got to look at their own families, their own coverages, their own, the city liabilities and stuff like that. So that's why we're looking at it as now, so. But
To the chair, and you raise a very good point. We're trying to address the issues where it's on a frequent basis. But there are times, and we would be covered, and we have no legal issues, in which it would be prudent for a city employee to use their vehicle for personal use.
Sure.
For example, it wouldn't be prudent for the city to purchase a vehicle for me. The majority of my time I spend in City Hall. But there are times where I do travel around in my own personal vehicle, and there's actually nothing inappropriate with that whatsoever.
Okay.
So in an instance like me, if I'm traveling
So you
to
would
a
be
meeting-
covered through the city on your own personal vehicle while you're doing that travel period of time, correct? Okay. All right.
It's not a good policy, though, for somebody that's actually performing manual labor on a regular basis, day in and day out, driving their personal vehicle around.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
we shouldn't be asking that of employees.
No, that's crazy. So, all right, I'm done with my questioning. Any other questions? Gentlemen, what's your pleasure with this piece?
See the need for these vehicles after this discussion, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, so I personally am in favor of these vehicles that are very much needed, so.
All right.
But I have no further questions of Mr. Lane,
Okay.
unless these
Is-
other items he's involved with.
Is there any other questions with the top three, the F-450 dump, F-350 truck, and freighter dump truck? Is there any questions with those
No, I think that
three?
was brought up
Okay,
the last go-around.
yeah. All right, excuse
Oh,
customary.
the street sweeper, I do have a question on.
Go
That's
for it.
item-
Councilman Matusky?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The street sweeper, this would go to you, Mr. Director St. Louis. The city is sweeping the streets now themselves?
We are. We have one street sweeper in-house, and we contract another street sweeper,
So you rent it more or less, is that it?
with an operator, correct.
Oh, with an operator, okay. So this street sweeper will be brand new. It's a new street sweeper? Correct. Well, the streets do look better, and I know that whoever's driving them in the Department of Public Works does a good job, because they can spin those things around on a dime. It's amazing what they do. But in a few short months, we will need street sweeping, because there's going to be a lot of people traveling around here. So I could see the need for that also. So that we have one, and so this will eliminate the contracted one?
I believe so. Certainly, the lower Broadway area, I think, is going to put an additional strain on the activities of the sweeping. This will allow us to hit more areas more often.
No, I was hoping that the Encore people would actually do that whole neighborhood, but that's another issue to bring up to them. Yes, Councilman Simonelli backed up that years ago, New England Polarized, the scrap metal business, did the whole line area. Because as you probably know, there's a lot of metal that fall off these trucks. Some of them look like the Beverly Hillbillies going up the street, and there was a lot of complaints about metal and debris. So the New England Polarized, that's where they're going with the scrap metal, but now there's 7 scrap metal places around. So you can't really determine where people are going, but maybe the casino would be interested in a street sweeping vehicle down the road, but that's something I will bring up when we have
General.
Mr. DeSalvo up here again. Sure. But no, I'm in favor of that too, so. But I want to thank the gentleman for being here with all this good information, and as you said earlier, Mr. Chairman, even though we do this in this committee, there are members who didn't watch this meeting tonight and may ask more questions. Am I right, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, absolutely.
That generally is the rule of thumb here, but thank you very much for being here tonight.
Excuse the customary thanks.
Excuse with the customary thanks. Second the motion.
And on the motion, what would you like to do with the piece? Favorable action? Motion made and seconded for favorable
I'll second that
action.
motion by Councilman Simonelli.
All those in favor?
Favorable action on the.
All those opposed?
I want, if I might, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
I want to congratulate you. I said it earlier in the meeting, and I mean what I say. You run a good meeting, professional. You should be proud of yourself. You conduct yourself as the chairman, and you don't take favorites. And of course, there's no 5-minute rule in a committee meeting, but
We're here to do research. That's
do
what we're here.
research, and I appreciate the good work you do. It's a pleasure to serve on the committee that you chair.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman, through you for Councilman Simonelli, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be a sitting member with Councilman Matusky, the dean of our council. Would you agree?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn and seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? You have done so.